big 5 active cultures of play in tabletop RPGs today. This is going to be a broad strokes overview. I do want to get into the details, but let's start with the basics. A rough time of origin, the role of the GM, the player, and the story, relative importance of game balance, and character specialness. Start with the traditional or trad culture. Not the first or the oldest culture of play, despite the name, starting around the mid-80s. The GM is pretty much the ultimate authority in trad. And player agency is often pretty rigidly defined by the abilities and mechanics the game gives them. Narrative in trad flows from the GM, who usually has a pre-planned adventure. Experiencing the GM's storytelling justifies the events of the game and might even be the purpose of play. Mechanical balance is very important as the events of the game are tailored to the party. Your character is not special, meaning player characters and NPCs are built and operate on the same set of rules. Player characters are not mechanically unique. Next up, story games emerging from communities like The Forge in the early 2000s. Story games reduce, meter, and disperse the GM's authority, elevating players to a much more collaborative, contributory role. Both now have ways to exert authorial control over the fiction of the game. The narrative is king, and story games expect the players, the GM, and the mechanics of the game to be engaged in creating it. Game balance is less important. In story games, players don't need to be on equal footing with NPCs or even other players. But your character is often special, given resources and abilities NPCs don't have. Also emerging in the early aughts is the OSR. GM has authority as the source of extremely important rulings, but is expected to be a neutral and fair arbiter. Player agency is paramount and is not limited or defined by mechanical abilities granted by the game. Story is de-emphasized. The truth of the fiction is important. The GM is expected to have a scenario, not a plot. Narrative in the OSR is emergent from the events of the game. Game balance is supremely unimportant. In fact, imbalance is often the source of challenge. Your character is generally not special, though recent developments in this culture are starting to change that. In the late 2000s, we see the rise of neo-trad gaming. GM is still the highest authority. Player agency is still mostly meted out by the game mechanics, and the mechanical build of your character is central to the culture. The GM has the story, as in trad, and it flows down from them, but they gotta respect the build. Game balance, the GM building balanced encounters, is one of the most important things in neo-trad. And of course, those characters are special. They can do things that no one else can do. In our most recent major play culture, OC, emerging in the mid-2010s. GM is again the highest authority, superseding even the rules themselves. Mechanical player agency is much as neo-trad, but OC players have a little more narrative control, because story in OC is about character arcs. So your character's backstory and desires are expected to shape the narrative. Mechanical balance is pretty much an afterthought. A lot of OC GMs simply eschew it, but the characters are so special. OC means original character, and the OCs in this culture will warp the game around themselves. God, this is taking so much longer than I thought. Follow for the deep dives.